They're so good. I was so excited. They turned out so well. I know you're gonna love them. They taste so good. I hope you guys have a happy holiday. If you're making this beyond the holiday, what's up? It's so cool to get that holiday vibe any time of the year. It's so crunchy and crispy. It's so good. Alright guys, here we go. This is my not so secret, because I'm sharing it with you right now, recipe for my wonderful latkes. Hey there, thanks for coming to hang out. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm Brighten Day, and my goal is to lighten you up and to brighten your day. So please subscribe, like, and share this video. It really helps grow my channel. Today we are going to be making latke. That's why we have so many cool potatoes and onions here, and we have this really cool mandolin slicer to help speed up the process. You can make latke with any potatoes, but supposedly these russet ones at the bottom here have more starch, so we're going to use those today. We also have two different kinds of onions up here. We have the red one and this yellow one. You can use either of them, but we're going to use the yellow one today. These latke turn out so wonderful. We are a Hanukkah Christmas family, and I make these latkes so wonderful that anybody in your family will appreciate them like they were the real deal. So let's get started. The recipe that I'm going to use today only uses 2 potatoes, but I like to eat them so much, then we go through them so fast that I'm going to double the recipe, and I'm going to use 4 of these wonderful big potatoes. And depending on their size, I might even use 5, which it looks like I'm going to, because why not? It just makes more. And the recipe calls for 1 onion. And we're not a onion heavy household, so we are just going to use 1 onion. Alright, now that I got all the other extra produce out of the way, I'm going to use this mandolin slicer and quickly chop up all of these potatoes into little tiny strips. You could also use this really cool peeler. It's similar to like a potato peeler that you're used to seeing, that it's just straight up and down, but it's got these really cool grooves on it that when you peel them, it cuts them into strips on its own. However, when I use this, I always use a fork, and I stab the potato into one of the ends to hold it, and then I'll just use the peeler that way because it's very, very sharp, and I cut my hand like a lot if I don't do that, so it's like you must do this. This thing has this really cool stainless steel attachment here that's going to protect my hands from the blade this whole time, so I really prefer using this slicer, and the mandolin is very fast, so you doing all 5 of these potatoes today is going to be like 10 seconds. I mean, it's really like, I don't know, a minute or so, but this takes a little bit. But they get very, very tiny and thin with these, so this is really cool too. And it's a much smaller tool and cheaper, so it's cool. Alright, so you'll be putting the potato inside here and putting this attachment on top and then slicing the potato. Now, it comes out the bottom, and we're going to want to put a bowl underneath to catch it all. So, I've got this wonderful, really big stainless steel bowl that works perfectly. I just set it right on top of it. And when you have this leg attachment down, it keeps it really secure. This is also the handle part that I'm going to be holding on to. I just wanted to show you guys like what that looked like. But I'm going to hold it here, and literally the potato's already in there, and it's going to fall right out the bottom. And you're just going to make some cuts, and the potato just shreds up really quickly. Like, ta-da, like that's really cool. It was really fast. So, quickly, I'm just going to keep adding the other potatoes and doing the same to them. And holding the handle, too, because if you don't, it'll get all crazy. As you see, everything's kind of like shaking. This machine is intense. And you should not put your fingers in the blade like I'm doing. That's a big no-no. So these like little ends, you can take them out because it has a hard time cutting the potatoes if you just keep adding them on top of each other for some reason. I'm not really sure why. You just gonna definitely have to use some muscle on this thing. But it is way faster than the other slicer that I showed you. I used to make really big batches with the same bowl and with that little slicer and just do that, and it takes you at least, I don't know, half hour easily. It's really time consuming, but it does the job. But I love this thing. All right, so we're almost done with the potato right here. Now, there are a few little scraps of the potatoes. I'm going to use a cutting board and cut them up, and I'm also going to use the cutting board for the onion and cut it up that way. This device can also dice, but I just really prefer it to help out so much with that potato, because look how much that made. So much, and this would take quite a while if I was using my slicer, so I'm going to put this in the sink. Alright, so I just gave everything a quick rinse, and now I'm going to get my cutting board out and start dicing up this onion and what's left of the potato. Just because why waste it, you know? This is totally edible potato and you can just cut it up. I'm just going to use a knife to cut up the rest of the potato scraps and the onion. So I'm going to bring you guys in and you can really see close up how cool a way to cut the onion. You can just cut this little fuzzy root thing right off, and at this other end you can slightly cut it, but not too deep. Then we're going to cut the onion completely in half. It's funny, you can really just pick any part that your heart desires. And then you're just going to take a peely layer off. I try not to waste too much onion, but if it's too thick, just don't even keep it, because it's going to be gross. Alright, so we got this. See this little part? That's where the roots were attached to? Yeah, that's where the roots were attached to. You want to keep that all together, and when we make these cuts, I'm going to make sure not to go deep enough to actually touch this thing right here. This is going to hold it all together. Now, my family really doesn't like onions, and they really like them only if they're diced very, very finely. They don't like them in big chunks at all. So I'm going to show you a really cool way that I learned how to dice onions that makes really small and consistent cuts. You're going to cut along the sides here, all the way down to the end there, but you're not going to go very deep on this end. So you're just going to start at one end and go all the way across, but we're going to stop probably about halfway to 3/4 of the way. I'm going to end up stopping, and I'm going to turn the onion around and then start again here, just because you use one hand or the other. And I try to just make these slices really close. I don't know the exact measurement, if it's a 1/4 inch or what. My family likes them just as tiny as I can physically get it done. But it's neat, like, because it's all, like, hanging on. Like, I can hold the onion up and I made all these cuts, but in the end, you'll see they're all going to be cut really nicely. Alright, so I went about, like, I usually go 75% to the end, and then I turn around and then just finish this baby up. And watch your fingers, obviously. It's not a race. And then you're just going to turn the onion to the side, so all the cuts that we made like this way, now we're going to turn to the side so it's like this way. But I'm going to cut against them all, so they will become now tiny little cubes. So again, the very same thing. Cut as close as physically possible that you can get to. Or if you want chunkier ones, you don't have to be that serious about it, and, you know, whatever, just chop them up. But my family really doesn't like onions, so I'm going to chop them up kind of carefully. But because we're doubling the recipe, I would, if you're chill with the onion, you could add the 2. But I just added the extra potato. So not very much waste. You could really take the time to cut that up, but I'm not going to worry about it at all. I kept these potato chunks because we're going to do a very similar thing with them. Literally the same thing. I'm going to cut up them one way to make strips along all of them. And then I'm going to turn them on their sides, and I'm going to do the exact same thing, and it's going to dice them up And I know the other ones are in strips that the mandolin made, but I just do them in cubes because they are not the same thickness and size as the mandolin did. It's kind of like these are really, really long, and I just think it makes a better finished product if you just go ahead and now just dice them up really quickly. Because also my family likes them really small with the Latke, so I try to get them smaller and use kind of smaller potatoes in the machine instead of such long big ones. There, so you just dice that up really nicely, isn't it cute? Alright, so the recipe calls to about 1 to 2 teaspoons of salt. Now, I try not to too crazy about the salt, but I do try to eat some salt. So I'm going to do, for the double batch, I'm going to end up doing 2 teaspoons of salt. If I were making one batch, I would end up just doing the 1 teaspoon of salt instead of the full 2. That's just my preference. That's what I like to do. So I'm just going to use the sea salt right here. And technically further in this recipe is when you would be adding the salt with your spices and stuff, is typically when they ask for it. But one of the first steps of making Latke is you want to use cheesecloth, and you physically are going to be squeezing out the juices of the potatoes and the onions. Now, I've made a lot of fermented foods and stuff, and when you add salt to them, it helps to naturally take out their juices, and that's what you end up like pickling them in. So I tried doing the same thing with the Latke, just adding it to the potatoes and this onions, and I let it sit for a couple minutes, not like 10 minutes or anything, just for a few minutes, and you'll see that it makes a lot of the juice come out, I think, a lot easier. So right now I'm just going to add the rest of the onion and the rest of the potato that we just chopped up into the beginning of our potatoes that we made for the mandolin slicer. So mix all that yummy stuff up. So I'm just going to measure that out really quickly. The measurement I have this spoon is a half a teaspoon. So that's why you're going to see, oh, I'm going to add it 4 times. So I can get to a total of 2 teaspoons because I doubled the batch. Alright, so I got all the salt and stuff in there, and typically you wouldn't add it right now, but that was my little trick, so I hope you guys use it at home. And you just kind of stir it around right now. And just keep stirring, just keep stirring. Because as you see, not a lot of liquid is coming out from the very beginning, and be like, holy cow, there's like, you have to really squeeze really hard. But I swear, this is going to make it so much easier. Now go either make yourself a yummy drink or go do the dishes. I did both, and then come back and check on the potatoes. Yummy. Thanks for hanging out, guys. I hope you're having fun. I can't wait till you see the rest of the Latkes. They're so tasty. Guys, the potatoes have been sitting for a little bit. They are ready to be squeezed literally in cheesecloth. We're going to take the cheesecloth and take potatoes and put them inside of here. And we're literally going to squeeze it and get all the juices as much as we can. You don't have to be that serious about it, but they do taste better when you get the most juice out. If you don't get the most juice out, they'll taste very much like hash browns. That feels really cool, so we're going to have some fun and squeeze the juice out right now. Is there an easy way to do this? I'm not sure. It's a funky kind of process. I like to literally just scoop some out. Onto the thing. And I try not to get the juice, like there's juice at the bottom. I just try not to get that on. I haven't really found a better way to do this, that it's just kind of a funny thing in general. I just have some fun with it. If it gets on the counters, oh well. Life will go on. Alright guys, so we're no joke. We're just gonna literally tie this up like this, and just kind of spin it around. Oh, pardon me, I've used this cheesecloth a few times. I don't usually use them just one time. I kind of do it a bunch of times. Now you just kind of like tie it all together as best you can. And you're just gonna squeeze it. I'm gonna put this over a thing because all this juice is coming out. You're just gonna squeeze and squeeze and keep twisting and twisting and squeezing and squeezing. And it's so weird. All this juice is gonna come out. I just keep squeezing and squeezing. It's really squishy. It feels really good. I like squishing these stuff. And you literally, as hard as you can, like I'm really pushing and pushing my arms together to squish out as much juicy stuff as I can. And ooh, there's a lot of juice in there already. I hope you can see that. I really feel adding the salt helps. This is a lot harder and you don't get that much stuff out of it if you don't do that. Ooh, you hear the cheesecloth ripping. It's worth it. Squeeze it out. Squeeze all that juice. Just keep squeezing it, shake it, whatever you gotta do. Woo. Alright, well I am tired, so I am done with that. There is a lot of juice in there, so I'm gonna just go dump all that out. Alright, now that you've mushed them up really good and got all the liquid out as best as you can, you see even some's coming out on the counter, but it's hard. So I'm just going to dump them out into the bowl. And I've reused this sheet. This is the third time now using the same cheesecloth. It ripped a lot this time. I might not use it again, but I really like to get the most for my money, so I'm honestly going to probably use this for a fourth time, and hopefully get it for a fifth, sixth, and seventh time. It's a little tedious to clean it, but I think it's worth it. So they're in there. The next step is to add the eggs. The recipe calls for 2 eggs. Now, I really don't like eating that many eggs, so even though we added an extra potato, instead of adding 4 eggs, I'm going to add 3 eggs, and that's just going to be it. It's still going to work out really well. Whew. And you're just going to want to mix that up really well. This is going to make all the spices and flours stick to all the potatoes and onions and hold everything in its shape. So we kind of make them smaller. So we're going to make them in 8 tablespoons and drop them in the hot oil and deep fry them. But now that they're really well coated, we're going to go ahead and add the flour and all the other cool ingredients. I will give you my secret recipe. Alright guys, here we go. This is my not so secret because I'm sharing it with you right now recipe for my wonderful latkes. We are going to add a cup of flour because I doubled the recipe, but typically the recipe just uses a half a cup. So you'll see me adding it twice. I know I could have just used the 1 cup, but I figured keep it easy for you guys so you know what you're doing. You just add it once, but I'm going to add it twice. Then we want to add 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Again, I'm using a ½ teaspoon measurement, so this has only been 1. Now that would be for 1 batch, and now because we doubled the recipe, we are going to do it 4 times to give me 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Now, for the spices. Now, the salt, the whole total recipe calls for about 1 to 2 teaspoons of salt. Now, I already mentioned I only like a little bit of salt. So, honestly, all the salt that I already put in there, that's it. I'm going to add I'll add a little bit right now, just for a little bit of flavor. But not even filling the whole teaspoon, ½ a teaspoon up, because I think it's going to be salty enough. So, that's it for the salt. Now for the spices, I really like to use cumin, and I'm going to add in here 3 teaspoons for each batch. So, yep, I'm going to use 6 whole teaspoons for the whole thing. So there's a ½ teaspoon measurement, so yep, I'm going to do this 12 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. And they were kind of like keeping whatever size teaspoons is really not that serious. I like the spiciness of them a lot. The paprika is here. I'm going to add it at the very end. I love its flavor as a topping for it. I think it's delicious. But the garlic powder, we are going to add 1 teaspoon each. So I'm going to double it again. We're going to add 2 teaspoons. So I'm going to be doing this 4 times. Because it's a ½ teaspoon measurement for me. And I'm going to add 1 for good luck. Because I like garlic. I think it's real good for you. So is cumin. All these spices are so good for you. Now the black pepper, it calls for just a ½ teaspoon for the recipe, so I'm gonna double it and give it 1 teaspoon full. And a little bit, just the tiniest little bit more, because I really like black pepper too. It's really good for purifying your blood. So I'm going to put my spices away so it keeps the kitchen really organized and clean because I like to work in a clean environment. Alright guys, so I got all my spices added and I'm just going to mix them up together really well. Just going to mix it up really, really good. It smells so amazing. That's the key. You really, like when you're spicy at home, you don't have to be so particular with the recipe, but I really find when you can really smell it in the kitchen, then you know you've added enough spices and it's going to taste delicious. The cumin, originally, the recipe called for like 1 teaspoon, and it was like, is there any in here? Like when you make it? So honestly, I just kept bumping it up, and I've just found once you hit, that's why like 3 teaspoons, you know, it sounds like a lot when it's compared to 1 teaspoon of garlic. But honestly, when you bump up that flavor, it tastes so good. And yeah, you want to keep mixing this up so all of it is incorporated really well. You don't want to be stirring and then find like, oh, there's random bits of like, see that flour right there? That's not good. I mean, it's not a bad, you know, but you want to just make sure that it is all incorporated really, really well. Because what we're about to do now is we're going to heat up our deep fryer and get it ready to make the latke. Perfect. Alright guys, I'm going to add some extra virgin olive oil into my skillet and get it heated up and ready for frying. So I'm going to put kind of a lot in here. I want it to not be like a pancake where it is literally frying kind of on the pan more so than being deep fried. I'm going to simulate a deep fryer right here in my skillet. I'm heating it up right now, and it is, I don't know measurement wise, I don't think it's like an inch of oil, but I'm really not being that shy about how much oil I'm adding in here. I'm going to heat it up to about high-ish heat and get it kind of warm, and you'll see like bubbles and stuff kind of form. Okay guys, the oil is pretty warm. I'm going to start putting the latke inside the oil right now. Now I'm just using a tablespoon and I'm just kind of making like rounded scoops. I'm not really being that serious about it, but my family doesn't like them that big, so I'm not really trying to make super heaps or anything like that. And you just set them in there, and when you see them like bubbling like that, you know like the oil is ready. I waited for the oil to start bubbling on its own. I could see like little tiny air bubbles come up, so that's when I knew that it was time to start adding it in. I know this is a plastic scoop as well, so I'm being really careful not to get it into the oil. I have a stainless steel mesh strainer that I'm going to use to stir it around from here on out. And when they're in here, once they're added, they're going to sit for about 5 minutes, and then you're going to flip them for another 5 minutes. So I'm going to set a timer right now for 5 minutes, and I'll see you then. All right, so it has actually been like 6 minutes and probably a half. So I'm gonna flip them now, and you see they're like kind of a dark, beautiful color. That's what I'm going for. Typically, I don't know what it is. This is an electric skillet. I don't think they work as good as the regular fire skillets underneath, you know, like where you have a fire on the bottom. This one, you know, does the job, but I think it takes like a little extra minute sometimes. And it's, I don't know, still works. So I do this, and then I'm gonna see in another 5 minutes, but maybe I'll let it sit for another 6. But usually it really only one side takes like the extra minute to get it like that super beautiful crisp. But also in the meantime, I really suggest, I also did that in our last break, is I took a plate, a really big, nice plate, and I put a paper towel down, and I have this metal rack that I add as well. Sometimes I don't even use a paper towel, and I just use the metal rack. So you could really just use both, or if you only have one or the other, or just use none at all. It doesn't really matter, I really don't think. It has to do with like draining the oil or whatever, but I really don't mind eating it. I'm already eating a deep fried delicious food, so who really cares? Alright, time is up. I'm gonna take them out of the hot oil. And this little stainless steel scooper is super handy for this. And I just put it right on top of the rack and let it just drain off naturally. I try and let some oil like fall into the thing too, because like it just makes it go longer. Now I'm going to continue this for the rest of them, but not in this video. I'm going to do that off camera, and I'm just going to show you, because these are ready to eat now. I'm going to show you how to top them and make them super even more yummy and delicious. But they're super hot, so I'm not going to touch this one and put it on the thing. So in the meantime, I really suggest you getting your toppings. I got out here now sour cream, paprika, red pepper flakes, and some parsley. They're so good. I was so excited. They turned out so well. Okay, guys, I'm going to show you guys how to top them now. I let them sit there for a couple seconds, maybe a couple minutes. It's been now, and they just kind of cool off and get a little more ready to be eaten. So I'm going to start with some sour cream. If you're vegan, go for it. No sour cream, doesn't really matter to me. I'm going to put on some sour cream. All right, yum, yum, yum. And the other ones are going to be for the rest of my family, but I'm just going to show you, you know, typically you can eat 2 of them. Honestly, I eat so many of these things. That's why there's so much batter left. It's just, that makes so wonderful big batch. I'm going to put some parsley on them right now, some red pepper flakes, and some paprika. I love paprika. Gotta get some more. Ooh. Yeah, heavy-handed on it because I love it. And there it is, guys. That's the latke. It's all ready. Thank you so much for hanging out. I know you're going to love them. They taste so good. I hope you guys have a happy holiday. If you're making this beyond the holiday, what's up? It's so cool to get that holiday vibe any time of the year. These are so wonderful to make and super wonderful the next day, even if you have leftovers. I hope you guys can hear that. It's so crunchy and crispy. It's so good. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, guys. I really appreciate your time. I'll see you in the next video, guys. Bye!